Okay, so thank you so much, everyone, for joining our Insiders call today. It has been maybe a month since, no, 2 months since we've done our last call. So we really wanted to share what we've been working on and what are our plans for the future. Today we have two major topics on the agenda. So we will start with a recap of the latest web part improvements. Those will be launched today to insiders, so everyone on this call will have access to that today. We will also share what's coming up next on our November 16 release. Then on the second part of the call, we will reintroduce Automate 365. We've been talking a lot about it for a couple of years now, but this call hasn't been, or this forum hasn't been a, 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 the focus hasn't been Automate. We want to make sure that everyone is aware of the product so that we can start using these sessions also to share what we're working on when we talk about Automate 365. Then, of course, we will open up for feedback and suggestions at the end. Still, if you have questions during the presentation, feel free to interrupt us. Today, joining me on the call, I have Carlos, our CDO. Most of you probably already know him. If not, you'll get the chance to know him today. And to jump into the actual content of today's session and the main goal that brought us here, the new web parts experience. If you've joined some of the previous calls, you already know that we've been modernizing our set of web parts, right, to kind of step up the game when we're talking about Office 365 customers. Since the beginning of this initiative, we've already launched 5 new web parts: Celebration, Script Editor, Lists, Title, and Divider. And we've also refactored 2 other web parts, so Quick Links and Image Gallery, web parts that existed since the early days of on-prem, but that we've now refactored for SharePoint Online. Now, since our last call on August 24, when we've launched the image gallery for insiders, we've been reviewing everything that we'd launched so far and making smaller but very much needed improvements. So today we're going to release that first batch of improvements to insiders only. They will be available to the public on November 3. We will then do another release on November 16 for Insider with a second batch of minor improvements to existing web parts. On that call, on Insider call from November 16, we also hope to be able to share more details on what we're going to do with our People web part and our Documents web part, which are the 2 web parts that are going to be refactoring after we close this cycle of smaller improvements to existing web parts. So starting with what we've done so far and what's going to be launched today in your insider accounts. You know that it's very important for us to make sure you feel heard on all the suggestions and requirements you're sharing. So I'm going to be updating you on what was done and what wasn't done from everything that we've received from you guys on surveys and calls that we've done so far. So Celebrations, which was launched in June, I believe, May, June, will finally connect to Azure AD. And we know this has been a much awaited feature since we launched this web part. So we're happy to share that that's going to be live today for you. We've also added a very, very cool functionality that will allow users to congratulate colleagues on birthdays or work anniversaries using either email or Teams cards, leveraging the praises from Microsoft that you already know. I strongly believe that this is going to make the web part much more interesting and interactive, right? And the fact that it's integrating with praises, it's going to make it funnier and a bit more personal, right? So we're excited about that. Now we've also added search and filter capabilities to Celebrations, which allows the end user to search for a specific person's birthday or to filter for a specific department, right? And all the people from that department's anniversaries or birthdays. Still to be implemented is the possibility to receive reminders of birthdays that are coming up next, and also pagination. These are things that we hope to work in the future. On lists, List was launched as an evolution of filters, right? And because we ended up doing a separate webpart just for lists, there are some needed functionalities and capabilities that we felt that were lacking. So one of them was multiple selection of filters, right? And I think, yeah, we have a screenshot here. Now you can have more than one just selected. Having just one was an inheritance from the BindTuning filters webpart. With lists, now we want to make sure you can select more than one, and also that you can select all without having to go through all the boxes and clicking, which was the experience we had until now. The same goes for the unselect, right? You'll be able to unselect on click and also, sorry, unselect on click and also to unselect all. So we're making it easier to navigate content that you're displaying using filters. On quick links. Last time when we launched quick links, I think everyone felt that we were missing enhanced sorting, right? In our legacy version of quick links, you could sort quick links. With the new version of quick links, you had to drag and drop, right? We're giving again the flexibility to sort by any given field and also to search. So far, we still haven't implemented filtering, but it's open for discussion. So here you see the new layout with the search bar and the sorting available. We're still working on the, sorry, this is a bit bumpy today. We're still working on a couple of new layouts and display ways. So grid slider paging, this will also be available for quick links, but not yet, not on this release from today. Image gallery. So the new image gallery layouts were not displaying folder names. This has now been corrected. So independently of the layout you're using, if you have folders, the name of the folder will be displayed correctly. Also, the image gallery search was not including the file name as a default search criteria, and that was negatively impacting search results. And this was also fixed. On title and divider, we still haven't been able to fix that bug with the background color not changing to black very smoothly, but the team is working on that, and hopefully in the next release, we will be able to have this fixed. Okay, what's coming up next? So currently, at this sprint, we already have the team working on other smaller improvements to the webparts I've just mentioned. I want to make sure that I share those with you today so that you're ready when they come up, even though on November 16, we may go and recap this again, telling what we were able to achieve and what we weren't. So on image gallery, we will add the possibility of creating a library from the webpart and also to upload images with just drag and drop. Something that's currently not working, but that we feel is very important. We will also work to implement a suggestion that was given in our last call, I guess, or slightly after our last call, which is to limit the size of the files that can be used or to guide the user into having the right size for the file. We're still studying different ways of doing this, but it's on our sprint to this. It's on our sprint in our current sprint. Sorry. On quick links, we will be working on a new layout to include additional information that may be added to the link. And we're also extending the displays available. I mentioned that before. On title, this has also been a very common request. We're going to be improving the style consistency with other BindTuning webparts. We know that many of you use the title webparts to give titles to out-of-the-box webparts, right? Or just to display text. But with the layouts that we launched as part of the title webpart, we were lacking some consistency with the other BindTuning webparts, the new and the old. So we're creating a new layout that will kind of create the more seamless experience between all the add-ons that we're adding to the page. And we're also working on much awaited features that will actually apply across all our webparts. So enabling anchors to work with table of contents and enabling deep links to work with other webparts. So just avoiding having to use the out-of-the-box text, for example, to navigate around the page, having quick links, having deep links to assist with navigation using the BindTuning webparts, it's also becoming a possibility. And of course, improved search and improved sort, applicable to all webparts. Still under consideration, the one we've been talking about for some time now, so changing from saving the webpart to saving a list mode, not forgotten, but still there to discuss and study. On celebrations, the possibility to receive reminders, a new layout with a department visible, sorting, paging, and for quick links filtering. All of this is still open. If you have good use cases for any of these, please share. It will help us make a decision and the case for having these move forward. Any questions so far, just before we change topic? Questions or topics? No. Nope. Okay. Well, we'll have time at the end as well, so. Automate 365. So again, our goal today is really to establish some common ground in the community so that we can start sharing more updates on Automate 365 as well, because we've been investing a lot in this product and we feel it's exciting to also be able to share this with you. Quick recap of what Automate 365 is, right? So Automate 365 is a BindTuning solution separate from the internet offering for automated deployments. Now, it allows for the creation of custom workspaces based on templates to ensure user adoption, governance, alignment with best practices, removing the burden out of IT, right? Who is usually the one going through the manual, repetitive work of creating these workspaces. That we want to ensure are still relevant for the organization, right? They're still created, they're still relevant, structured in the right way, and of course, future-proof, right? So Automate 365 can be used in 100% out-of-the-box scenarios. I'll reinforce that. So again, independently from the internet offering, it supports the creation of templates using third-party apps, and among the different workspaces supported are SharePoint, Teams, Power BI, Planner, and a couple of others. What are the pain points that we are addressing with this solution? Many organizations have teams or departments that work in silos, right? So they have their own processes, their own practices, they structure content in their own way, with their own naming conventions. And well, many of you are probably now getting back on your feet after some crazy years in which everyone could create a team or a site for collaboration, right? With no real goal or purpose or pre-approval. And this scattered communication and silos creates significant challenges in terms of collaboration and productivity. And of course, Office 365 group sprawl that we all know. On the other hand, for organizations that have standards in place already and processes and approvals and all of that, they end up creating workspaces manually over and over again, right? With similar configuration, similar structure. Let's say, for example, a project workspace, right? Whenever you start a new project, maybe you set up a new team with a certain set of channels. Maybe you always have the same kind of tabs. For example, a planner there with some tasks that may be common between all projects, right? And maybe the structure of folders within teams, it's always the same, right? And maybe you always need a communication side, SharePoint side, for example, to communicate progress to your customer, right? All of these things are done over and over again manually by the IT team with no really value added between iterations, right? So what we're trying to do here is minimize the IT workload, avoid the repetitive manual work, and at the end, decrease the number of errors and inconsistencies that always happen when you're doing things by hand, right? So with Automate 365, our goal is really to empower teams to collaborate better, creating a common base of best practices for workspaces. These best practices are custom to each organization, right? But they are used internally to generate other workspaces based on those pre-approved best practices. Now, the process of creating of triggering each deployment is also custom to each organization. And the flexibility of the product and the solution really allows to match the business processes that exist in each individual organization while still diminishing the workload of IT and without compromising scalability. So in this slide, you'll see a lot of things happening now, but this is the a high level architecture of the solution, right? And there are two stages when you're using Automate 365. The first is saving an existing workspace as a template. The second is deploying that workspace templates to create new workspaces, right? So two stages. All of this leverages a very straightforward, very clean user interface. It has been designed to be used by IT admins or SharePoint admins or team owners. But what makes the product really special is the blue block that you see there, the engine, and that lies underneath this appealing, very nice looking interface that enables more complex and advanced deployments. How is that template created? And let me go back a little bit before. So how is that template created? The first step is just gathering everyone in the organization that has something to say about the way you're managing projects or marketing campaigns or whatever, right? All the subject matter experts. They sit together, they review best practices, and once they define the structure of this ideal workspace, things like how many channels I need in my teams, what is the folder structure, what is the naming convention, all of that, as well as the documents, of course, the files, the content itself of the ideal workspace. Then the ideal site, team, Power BI dashboard is created, right? And it's saved as a template. To take the workspace creation to another level, we have what we call an automation project, right? Which basically elevates the experience from being just copying structure and content from one place to the other to actually creating a dynamic workspace deployed automatically at scale. So you can, when you're building your automation project, what you're basically configuring are things like what is the data source that you want to connect, right? Or what are the triggering rules that you want to start the deployment, the conditions, right, for the deployment to start. You can use mappings to customize the workspace with data that you have in your data source. So all of this makes the process a lot more interesting than just copying, cloning teams and sites and whatever. And of course, as part of the automation project, I forgot that last one, you can ensure governance stays under control, right, with the necessary approval workflows implemented as well. Now, the potential of the solution really lies in the deep integrations that that are possible with any existing process within the organization. So I could be creating SharePoint sites automatically for all customers for whom I have a closed won sale in my CRM, Salesforce, for example, right? So I'm shaping a solution around what I already have. I'm not needing, I don't need to do things differently necessarily. Now, as far as the actual deployment goes, we also need to decide how we're going to get that deployment to run or to start, right? And that's also an individual decision for each organization and each process. New workspaces can be requested or created on demand. So you have an IT admin that centralizes all of that. They click on a button and they say, I want to create one new team based on this template or 10 new teams at the same time based on this template, right? That's what we say automate deployment on request. We may also, however, give that power to a larger group of users, such as project owners or account managers, who can self-serve, right? So they can request, they can submit a request saying, I want a project site just like that one I have for my new project that's starting. We may also want to have deployments that are 100% automated and data driven. And that would mean the example I've given you before about Salesforce, right? There's no one saying I want a site for this customer and this sale that I've just closed. That's just triggered automatically when I close my sale in Salesforce. Again, that's up to each organization to define. Either way, once the project is ended, the deployment process is ended, we can implement some callbacks that allow for other workflows to be defined. For example, updating your CRM with a link for that customer project site. Okay. Now I know this was a lot of theory, so I'm handing over to Carlos now. He'll show you the product actually working. I don't know if you have any questions so far that you want to raise while Carlos is pushing up his demo. Nope. Okay, Carlos, off you go.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so let me try to do the same. It will not be the same amazing presentation like Francisca did, but I will try to do my best at least to be so clear like she was, explaining all the way that Automate 365 and everything regarding the web parts that we publish will be available right now into all the insiders account. Okay, so regarding Automate 365, so let's do the process, all the process from scratch. I will explain the two phases that, more than two phases, but the two more important points that Francisca mentioned during the presentation. That is the first is be using the application itself, be using the BindTuning app to collect and to install a template. And the second one, I will show a showcase how we can create a self-deployment, as well be using a data source to trigger the process, also to be able to deploy a template based on the content that you may have into a SharePoint list, for example. Okay, so Automate 365, there is a section available inside the BindTuning app that will allow all the users to collect and to install templates based on the platforms that they were explained before. So we are able to deploy and to collect templates for Office 365, Microsoft Teams, and we will be soon release the possibility to collect and to install as well Project Planner, as well Power BIs, and a few more platforms that we are still cooking on the background right now, and also to be able to provide that to all the users. So in order to create a new template, so and imagine that I have a project site and I want to create exactly a template that will include pretty much everything that we have here inside this site collection. And once we are talking about the site collection inside an Office 365, there are a few different data and information that we do not see, but there is inside the site collection. I mean, like metadata, like term sets, like content types. So everything that we may be using into, for example, a document library that we want sensitive labels, for example, that we want to have that information available into a document library, we will also be able to collect that information into a template. And in the moment that we want to create and replicate that site collection with that exactly look and feel and content, we will be able to do that with Automate 365. So this site collection includes pages, includes web parts, includes lists, includes content type, navigation, metadata, as well page templates, and that is one of the functionality that was released in the last week, the possibility to also to collect and provisioning page templates that you may have created into your site pages inside the modern site collection. So a very simple site, a project site with a few examples about with our web parts that connects to other pages, and I want to have exactly the same a template with the same information. So the process is very simple. So once we go to the BindTuning application, you just need to create a new template. And here you need to provide your user that has access to, that is the owner of that site collection. I will pick Office 365, and as I mentioned before, soon we'll be releasing here three more platforms available. So I will hit next, and once the engine just starts to get information about which are the site collection which I'm owner of, because I was just giving on the input from the text my email address, so the engine will just get all the sites available for my user. So I will pick the same that I have it here. So I will just search for project site, for example, make a search, and I will pick. So once we do this and hit next, the process right now in our engine is collecting all the information inside the template. And there are a few options that we provide by default. There are other options that we are still working on and that soon that will also be available. And so right now you have the possibility to include pages, lists, folder structure and permissions as well for the files, the same exactly metadata. And also regarding solutions that you may have, you can also include the solutions that you have inside your app catalog. And if this will be a classic site collection, you can also include your WSPs. We detect that the site is a modern site, so this option is disabled by default. What we are creating right now and including very soon, probably in the next upcoming days, will be the possibility as well to define which site security permissions you want to include. Everyone that works with the SharePoint site know that they are site owners, site visitors, and site members, that they are used inside the site group functionality inside a SharePoint site collection. And we are also providing the flexibility to the users to specify if they want, on the moment that they are creating a template, if they want to collect as well that kind of information and provide that in the moment that you are replicating that into a new installation. Okay, so clicking on next, I can give just a name from the template that I'm creating. I will do like demo projects. I can apply a category, and this information here is just metadata information inside the BindTuning marketplace that can be used to search, to using the search within the app. So I will select communication. I will add a tag like project, for example. Short description I will leave as it is, full description as well, and hit next. Once we do that, this will send a message to our engine and we'll start to collect the templates. So the time for collecting the template, that will always depend on the amount of information that you may have. Of course, that templates and site collection with a lot of lists and files, it can take more time to be collected. But the average by collecting a site can be like 5-7 minutes in average, but of course, depending on the amount of information that you may have. So if you go right now to the recent activity information, you will have log about everything that is being doing behind the scenes. So right now, the process is just starting. Once the process just starts, we will start to sending logs directly here to that panel, and the user will be able to understand exactly everything that is being doing behind the scenes regarding collected template. So as you can see, it's a process very straightforward and simple. And once the process is done, this card here will automatically refresh it. There is no need to refresh the app to see that, okay, I have already the template available. This will be automatically available. So once the process is done, you will be able to now go through the installation process. And the installation process is much similar from the ones from collecting a template. So right now I will install this Office 365 template that I previously collected. I will hit the install button, and right now you have different options that you can perform regarding the installation. So you can create a new site collection from scratch. You can install into a new subsite inside the site collection, or you can update an existing site collection. So there are three different actions that you can take. I will just pick the first one, go through this process. So once you select the option to create a new site collection, you can give a name to the site collection, a title. I will call projects BT demo. So I will not hit any description. And once we add the title, the URL is automatically applied. Of course, you can always say another thing if you want. And once you have everything set up, you can just hit next, and this will do the same step. So this will send a message to our server and start the process to install the template. At the end, you'll have an entire site collection exactly the same look and feel from the site collection that you collect as a template, and you will be able to start working on your new site collection. So we know that this process is a simple one, but it needs always the admin to have an interaction directly with the app. So there are a few more options available in terms of installing a template that you will be able to perform depending, of course, on the subscription that you may have from BindTuning. So let's imagine that we want to use a self-service deployment. Let's imagine a few simple scenarios. Let's imagine that we have a Power App and we want to fill a form into a Power App that all the users have access to, or at least the ones that the Power App it was shared with. And once the users just fill that Power App, this will trigger automatically the process. So with the possibilities that we have behind the scenes that we use, this will be very simple to achieve as well and to create that process. So right now into the recent activity, you can see that I'm creating the new template, but I'm also installing. So this process will work in parallel. So there is nothing related with the amount of information, because one of our goals inside Automate 365 is also to provide full flexibility at scale. Is not only one template per installation. You can have one template and install multiple installations at the same time. If you are talking about, for example, Microsoft Teams, you can have a template for Teams and specify that you want to install that template based on the groups that you may have into your AD, Microsoft 365 groups. And for each group that you will be picking on the list that we provide, the template will be installed for all those groups and create a new team based on that group with the template that you selected. So this is also an installation at scale. Okay, so we have a section also into the Automate 365 product that we call the company projects. So here is the place where we configure everything regarding what we'll be doing in terms of create a trigger based on an installation. So anytime that your process ends regarding your installation, so you collect a template, you do an installation. If you identify that the installation at the end is perfect, you can just come here to this section and save your installation as favorite. And I will pick like the project demo, for example, and I will save this. And this project, oh, okay, so it's a demo, so sometimes that works. So you can just save as a favorite, and once you save as a favorite this project demo, so I think that I already have one with that same name, that's why it was retrieving an error. That means that you'll be able to use that favorite into your installation. So once I come here to my Power App, that will be my self-service deployments. If I click on the plus icon, I have a very simple Power App that has a title, a status, year, month, a few inputs that I think that are very important. But I also have a template that is the place where I will add, since it is linked with a SharePoint list that has a column with a drop down with a choice column, and all the favorites that I will save into the BindTuning app, I will just add it as well into this dropdown. And once I fill the form and I select the template, this will automatically trigger the process to deploy directly the template into a new site collection that will be using the title to specify the title of the site collection as well the URL. Okay, this is a very simple process that can use the Automate 365 behind the scenes and provide the full flexibility for the users which do not have access, which they are not admins into the BindTuning application, neither into the SharePoint, because this will trigger the process using the template created and installed by the admin. But we know that we can also use a data source. And if we want to use a data source, we can also use this self-service Power App, but we can also use, for example, SharePoint list, and anything that will fill into the Power App will be added directly to that SharePoint list. And at the same moment, we can have a Power Flow that Power Automate flow that is just listening to any new entry that will be added to that SharePoint list. And once the Power Automate flow detects that the new element was added to that list, it will trigger the process to start the deployment as well. And in that deployment, we can also specify a few options like approval workflows. Let's imagine that anytime that the user fills a form into a Power App that goes through a SharePoint list that triggers a Power Flow, that will a Power Automate flow that will have an approve workflow that will send an approve workflow for a specific user into my organization, and that person will be the ones that will accept or not the installation of the new site collection based on the template that the user selects inside the Power App. So that process is so simple, like to create a Power App, a SharePoint list, create an approval workflow, and those options are fully integrated directly with SharePoint, for example. And if you are using a SharePoint list, you can also integrate directly the Power Automate flow. And once you select create a flow, you can select one of the templates that are available that includes already a workflow approval. And in that workflow, the only thing that you will need to do in the yes action from the workflow approval is just to add a connector and specify the webhook that BindTuning provides. Also, and at the end of the process, you can also trigger some callbacks response. So imagine that every time that the process ends, you want to come to that SharePoint list, or like was mentioned by Francisco, to your Salesforce CRM and update a field with the URL from the site collection that was provisioned. So we also provide webhooks that will allows you to specify which webhooks you want to run. It can be a webhook from a Power Automate manually process. It can be a webhook to send information to a Teams chat. It can be a webhook to send directly to an API that you have in-house that will trigger other workflows that you may have already created. So the process is so flexible that you can use any kind of approach, use any kind of third-party tools. I'm using Microsoft applications like Power Apps, SharePoint lists, and a Power Automate flow, but it can be anything because the trigger can be just done if you go to the browser and if you enter the URL from your project that you create inside BindTuning. There is also one amazing possibility that is the map filtering that allows you to create, as we call internally, dynamic templates. So imagine this site collection here that we have for news. In this site collection, I have a few fields that includes a specific syntax. You can see here on this tile, you can also see here on this title of this document library, and there are a few more that are across all the pages in this site collection. What this means? So this means that you will be able, using the filter mapping functionality, to collect the template. So I will be collecting this site collection, create a template for that specific site collection. I will create all my self-service deployments. I will create also a data-driven project based on the trigger that will be regarding a new entry that will be added to a SharePoint list. And I will install a template that includes this syntax. What our process will be doing behind the scenes is regarding all the data that you have into those columns. And you can see that I have here a column hours contracted. So that means that in the process of the deployment, once we are creating the new installation based on the new and on the new row that was added to that SharePoint list, we will grab the information from the column and you will be replacing the value directly in the new site collection that will be created based on the template. That's why we call dynamic templates that will allow the users to collect a template with specific filter mapping variables within the template. And in the moment of the deployment, we will match with the value of the column that is being deployed, the row that is being deployed, we will grab the value and replace that on the new installation that we are doing. So as you can see, there are a huge possibilities with Automate 365, not the on-demand deployment directly with the app. You can create your own entire workflow internally with your company, use any kind of third-party tools, Microsoft or other ones, and create your process to deploy new templates that we want to create for different platforms like Office 365, Microsoft Teams, Planner, Project, and Power BI. I think I cover everything that I was planned from my side. Francisca, do we
Yeah.
have any question?
Got our brains thinking. Yeah, this could be cool. I really like the template with the patterns in it to inject the data, because that's a bit of a trick. We've got apps that we use for site copying and stuff that do a good job of copying, and replacing JavaScript and stuff to match the current site, but we don't have anything that like lets us bind data dynamically while we do that. So
Yeah, it can, David. It can be like a show inside a web part. It can be a title. It can be a document as well. For example, you can have a document that in the moment that that document is being deployed into the new document library, you want to change the name of that document to match exactly the name of the site collection or to any column that you have into your data source. And imagine that the data source is not only a SharePoint list. It can be a SharePoint list, but it can come, for example, from your internal CRM that has an API that just generates a JSON file. And that JSON file will be used as the data source for the data trigger. So it can be a JSON file, it can be an Excel file, it can be a CSV file, so it can be an API, so Salesforce, anything that you may have regarding data source. And based on the information, we just send that to the engine, and the engine will make the magic happens.
you guys might want to have a template validation or test tool and make sure everything we're trying to bind to exists. We're like just trying to think like this seems like a neat tool. Like I just feel like it'll be a lot of testing live. Like it's hard to make it designed for failure, right? But no, really cool. Got me thinking for sure. I'm a little worried it's not going to work for the way our tenant's set up, though, is it, Carlo?
You are
I'm
a
going to be
GCC.
screwed up, aren't I?
Your GCC high
Damn
tenant. Okay, so
it.
so I will not say 100% sure with all the endpoints that we are using, but almost the calls that we are doing in terms of Office 365, I will say that will work, because
Okay.
everything that we are doing is native inside SharePoint, is using all the PowerShell that SharePoint has behind the scenes. So if that will be a Teams, that will depend, because there are some endpoints from Graph that they are not allowed inside the GCC High. On that scenario, we will need to make some tests before we know exactly what we are if we are covering everything or not. But in terms of Office 365, I will be very, very confident that we can cover pretty much everything.
The way we've been doing this, David, and it's actually valid to anyone on the call. We've been running 1 week pilots with interested customers. We define a scope for like a test, let's call it like that. We meet like 3 times a week, Monday, or between 2 and 3 times a week. And we set up that pilot with you so that you can see how it works for your own setup and organization and goals. So just putting it out there in case anyone wants to follow up with that.
Yeah, because it's very important even for us to understand exactly what there is you have behind the scenes, because we know that each, and for the experience that we have inside SharePoint, we know exactly that each client, they have different scenarios, they have different ways to do. Sometimes it can be the same approach, the same thing, but they have different approach to do the same action, for example. And we this kind of approach that we have with the clients during the pilots, that 2 weeks that we have with 3 days per week, is also to understand what is behind the scenes in terms of the site collection that we are collecting, if there is anything that needs to be done on the client site collection, or anything that we can improve into our engine as well, because it can be that way. We are running a few pilots, and some of the pilots, some of the stuff that can be extra functionality, we are doing in our sites. So with that, we will be covering the most case the case possibles that we may have. So that is why it's so important as well for us, that pilot with meeting with the client to understand their needs and what they have behind the scenes. Because anytime that we collect a site collection, there are a few kind of information, metadata and term sets and site columns and site fields that can be different between each tenant. So, and that's why it's so important for us as well to understand that.
Good. I'll leave some additional time for questions at the end, but before we go away, I just want to give you an overview of how is this licensed, how is this priced, and this pricing still isn't public in our website. It will be shortly, but I wanted to share with you firsthand. So we have 3 tiers. The first tier starts at $500 a month, and it includes on-demand deployments, right? So what Carlos showed you at the beginning with the app, right? You collect the template, you go there to create new sites based on that template. The second tier starts at $1,250 a month, but it includes the self-service deployment for additional platforms that not just SharePoint and Teams that are covered with the first tier. By self-service deployment, we mean what Carlos showed you about the Power App, for example. It could be a Microsoft form also, or anything else that you're using, ServiceNow, whatever. It's just you submit a request to create a site that triggers the deployment of a new site, right? The third and most comprehensive tier, what we call the enterprise tier, it's priced at $2,000 a month, and it includes these last functionalities that Carlos mentioned. So the field mappings and the data-driven trigger deployments. So the story around Salesforce, adding new customer triggers new site. The name of the customer is the name of the site, right? Those mappings. So basically, in a nutshell, that's what differentiates the tiers and also the platforms that are supported by each. You can buy additional deployments per month if you need. There are groups of packages of additional deployments that you can buy. And also a final note, mostly for any partner on the call. But for I don't think we have an education customer on the call, but mostly for partners. The education pricing is different from this one. It's per seat, per student. Just in case any of you is interested, just feel free to reach out to me directly for additional details on this. And that's all we had to cover today. Just opening up for questions before we close the call. I know we're a bit late, sorry for that. Questions, comments, just
The documents, so the documents and people we're going to hear about next month.
yes,
So
November
it's still
16th.
in development. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
I know you were all excited about that. I am too.
I need that documents one. It's got to look
I
just
know.
like your images, okay? The bar was set high.
Yeah, we're working on it, David. We're working on it.
No, awesome.
So Francisca, this is Arvind. I have a question
Hi.
regarding this Automate 365. So
Mhm.
can it take template of communication sites or is it only team sites?
No, everything. Communication sites or team sites, yeah.
Okay.
And Power BI dashboards and Planner dashboards and teams, right?
And projects.
And projects, yeah. I always leave one out, sorry. Anything else? Well, if anything, you all have access to, so you all have access to our team, the insiders team, right? If you don't, let me know and I'll add you. We have all the recordings there, the slide decks, the links to share additional feedback, and you can also tag any one of us for additional follow-up questions. You'll receive updated versions of the webparts today in your account, right? They will be labeled with the insider version. Again, if you have any issues accessing those, if you can't find them, just ping me, okay? And I would be happy to assist. Thank you so much, everyone on the call. It has been a pleasure. I look forward to our next call next month, November 16th.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.